This is not a podcast for comfort. It's a podcast for clarity. In a culture flooded with noise, dangerous narratives, and emotional uncertainty, this space exists to examine what actually matters and what actually works. Here we question power itself, belief systems, and the assumptions most people inherit without inspection. Most people accept instead of dissect. This podcast is about correcting that. Welcome. Bienvenue. Welcome. Marhaban. Bienvenidos to the Magnificent Ones podcast. It's 4:58 in the morning. The world is not yet awake enough to judge you. The air is cold. The street lights hum faintly. There's something honest about that hour. Something stripped of performance. I'm 17 years old. Wrestler. Weightlifter. Volunteer 3 days a week. Straight A student. The disciplined one. The one adults point to as proof that hard work pays off. I lace my shoes in the dark and step outside, and I begin to run. 1 step, 2 steps, 8 feet, and I stop. Not because I'm injured, not because I'm winded, not because I physically can't continue. I stop because something inside of me refuses. I don't want to do this. That's a sentence that doesn't arrive emotionally. It arrives plainly. And in that moment, the body does not want to obey the will. And now if you're a high performer, I need you to listen carefully, because you know this moment. You may not have been 17. You may not have been running, but you have felt that subtle hesitation, that quiet resistance, that moment where the machine doesn't respond the way it used to. And because you are who you are, you interpreted that as weakness. You told yourself to refocus, recommit, get sharper, get disciplined again. High performers don't stop 8 feet in. That's the myth. But here's the truth we rarely speak out loud. The body always keeps score. If you are a leader, if you are the one others depend on, if you are the competent one, that's the responsibility that it just seems to find you automatically. Then this isn't just theoretical, it's a diagnostic. Because strength attracts weight. And if you're not intentional, weight accumulates faster than awareness. Years later, I'm lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The room is quiet. My phone is face down. It's past midnight. I have to be up early. My chest feels tight. Not panic, not sharp pain, just pressure. Like I'm bracing for something that hasn't happened yet. Now I replay the conversations, the decisions, future scenarios, responsibilities that aren't even due yet. My body is exhausted. My mind is not. I reach for melatonin. And that small act unsettles me more than I expect. Because somewhere in my identity, it's the belief that I should be able to regulate myself, that discipline should extend even further to sleep. But my body does not care about your mythology. At 17, I believed motion equaled virtue. 5 a.m. runs, 2 days a week, straight A student, volunteering. I believed if I kept moving forward, I would be safe from mediocrity, safe from irrelevance, safe from uncertainty. But safety built on a constant output is fragile. The morning, 8 feet into the dark wasn't laziness, it was a boundary. I just didn't have enough language for it. So I overrode it, and I kept building. The arena's changed. Now it's leadership. 14 years inside an institution, training people, mentoring, being the steady one, being the one people called years later to say changed their lives. Capability attracts weight. And if you are capable, more weight arrives. Layer ambition on top of that, the desire to build something meaningful, to integrate thinkers, to create depth instead of noise, to matter. From the outside, that looks impressive. From the inside, something else begins to happen. A few months ago, I started skipping the gym. Not once, not as a rest week, but repeatedly. For someone who built his identity around strength, strong mind, strong body, that unsettled me. I'd wake up and feel resistance, not laziness, not apathy, just something quiet. Like my system was saying, not today. And instead of interpreting that as information, I felt shame. Because if strength is who you are, what does hesitation mean? Here's what it means. It means the organism you inhabit has limits, and no amount of ambition rewrites biology. Burnout is not dramatic collapse. It's a quiet, recalibration, head tension that lingers, chest tightness, and that doesn't fully release, illness that revisits more often than it used to, sleep that fragments. The nervous system does not distinguish perfectly between a physical threat and sustained psychological strain. It measures intensity, it measures duration, it measures cost. And when cost exceeds capacity, it intervenes. And what that intervention looks like, we don't get to choose. So maybe it is the skipping the gym. Maybe it is taking a nap during the day to reset. Recently, I was sitting at my desk, and my mind, mid-afternoon, is kind of just slowly going through emails, calendar full. My deliverables are clear. And from the outside, everything looked functional. Inside my chest, felt tight again, not because of one task, because of maintenance, maintaining competence, maintaining composure, maintaining identity. And in that moment, I remembered being 17. I remembered 8 feet. I remember that distinctively. The body refusing blind obedience. Burnout is not about workload alone. It's about identity fused with, too tightly to performance. When your worth is entangled with output, every slowdown feels existential. If I am not advancing, I am dissolving. If I am not strong, I am failing. High performers rarely burn out because they hate what they do. They burn out because they never stop doing it. They never release responsibility mentally. They rehearse conversations. They anticipate outcomes, carry invisible weight for too long. After the hours of whatever the interaction was or whatever the task was is so long gone. And you're not designed to be an indefinite override. You're designed for rhythm, exertion and recovery, responsibility and release, leadership and restoration. And when rhythm disappears, erosions begin, and erosions is dangerous because it looks like functional from the outside. You still perform, you still produce, but internally you are braced. Let me speak quietly to leaders. If your head has been tight lately, if your chest feels compressed, if you're getting sick more often, if the gym feels like another obligation instead of refuge, that's not weakness, that's information. The most dangerous thing high performers can do is ignore information because it contradicts identity. So you start saying to yourself, if I acknowledge that I'm not okay, that means that who I am is no longer who I am. And to you, that may be the destruction of an entire world. And that world is your world. And the thing is, if it's your world, you can change what your world is. We have mistaken endurance for wisdom. That's what we do, right? We think that because we know things, it sometimes makes us invulnerable to other things. It means that we're immune from certain consequences because we have wisdom, because we have strength. We have mistaken exhaustion for virtue. Oh, I worked hard. That's why I'm tired. We've mistaken self-domination for mastery, and that's not the same thing. Having willpower to endure something or to go through something, yes, that's still not mastery. That's just endurance. And endurance for endurance sake, meaning you're just continuously pushed forward, that does nothing for you in the long run, other than leads you to an early grave or isolation in the long run. And we've built cultures that quietly reward internal erosion. But you cannot permanently negotiate with biology. You get older. You do. You are finite. Your nervous system is finite. Your life is finite. Your body is finite. That is unsettling. But it's also steadying. Because burnout is not the body breaking. It's the body protecting. The chest tightens to slow you down. The fatigue that you feel when your fatigue rises, it's to conserve you, to tell you, slow down. We need to hold something back for ourselves. Resistance appears so that you can, recalibrate. Here your body is saying and your mind is saying, let's not do this right now because this thing right here needs this vessel that holds our brain. It needs time to process everything. Let's not add more weight. Let's not add more burden to the brain. The brain is saying, please slow down. We've had all these things going on and we have not processed them yet. The chest tightens to slow you down, as I've said. And so the chest tightening leads me to this question. And the question is not, how do I push through? The question is, what is it costing me? At 17, I thought stopping meant failure. Now I understand it meant awareness. 8 feet into the dark is not weakness. It's the first honest confrontation with my own personal reality. So what's your 8 feet in? Your confrontation with your reality. For years, I believe that strength meant pushing past limits. I mean, that's like every anime as a 90s kid. If you watch anime, that's what it teaches you. Pushing through. I have no limits. Plus ultra. All of those fun terms. Ultra instinct, for all the anime, fans out there, talking to my millennials and my Gen Zs out there.
We'll be back after a quick break.
If you're a pet owner who wants real talk on training, behavior, and everyday life with animals, check out the Fresh Patch Podcast. Hosted by Drew and Gabe, we cover the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. So wherever you listen, search the Fresh Patch Podcast, where good pets get it.
I believe discipline could override biology. I really have. I believe that relentless motion was proof of my character. And I was wrong about that. Domination of self isn't mastery, it's misalignment. That is the reality that I currently am facing. The body is not an obstacle to overcome. You don't need to overcome yourself in certain situations. It's the boundary that keeps ambitions from turning into self-destruction. From this point forward, if I build, it will be in rhythm, personally. If I lead, it will be from awareness. If I pursue ambition, it will not come at the expense of the organisms that sustains it, meaning that I will protect my body and my mind. If I pursue ambition, it will not come at the expense of what my mental peace is. Now, if you're a leader, hear this clearly. Please, you do not have to bleed internally to justify your competence. You do not have to remain perpetually braced to prove your value. You do not have to override everyday signal your body sends to maintain your image. 8 feet into the dark is not the end of the run. It's the first step in an honest decision. And if you're brave enough to stand there, not react, not override, not perform, but evaluate, then you're not weak. You're finally awake. Everyone has their own 8 feet in the dark. There's a place every person walks through at some point in life, a place without light, without certainty, without clear direction. I call that place 8 feet in the dark. 8 feet is not far. It's not a lifetime. It's not an endless road. It's a short distance. But when we're in a place where there's no light, even 8 feet can feel impossible. When you cannot support yourself, you can't see where your next step is going. Even a small stretch becomes frightening. Even a small distance, feels like a void. 8 feet in the dark is where clarity disappears. It's where you lose the map you thought you had. It's the moment when the job no longer feels secure, when the relationship no longer feels certain, when your purpose feels distant, when your spirit feels tired, when the future is no longer obvious. Some people find their 8 feet in financial hardship. Others find it in loneliness. Some meet it in failure. Some meet it in grief. Some meet it in doubt. Some meet it when the version of themselves they believed in begins to fall apart. But when everyone has an 8 feet in the dark, no one escapes it. The strange thing about 8 feet in the dark is that from the outside, it does not always look like darkness. A man can be successful and still be walking through it. A woman can be smiling and still be walking through it. A leader can still be admired and still be walking through it. A family can look whole and still be walking through it. Because 8 feet in the dark is not about appearance. It's about awareness. 8 feet in the dark is the distance between who you are and who you must become. And most people never stop long enough to ask themselves a simple question. Do you even know what your 8 feet in the dark is? Many people are walking blind without realizing it. They feel frustration, but cannot name the source. They feel restlessness, but cannot explain it. They feel pressure, but cannot define it. They sense the darkness, but they never measure the distance. Awareness is the first light. The moment you name your 8 feet in the dark is the moment the darkness begins to lose power. When you can say, this is where I am uncertain, or this is where I am afraid, or this is where I am stuck, you've already begun to move forward, because darkness is strongest when it's undefined. 8 feet in the dark is not where you go to destroy that version of yourself. It's where you go to reveal the real you that's not okay, the real you that doesn't truly know who you are, the real you that is struggling to keep it together. It shows you your fears. It shows you your habits. It shows you your weaknesses. It shows you what you want to avoid. It shows you what you pretend to not see. And if you walk carefully, it also shows you your strength. Most people wait for someone else to bring them to light. They wait for better circumstances. They wait for permission. They wait for motivation. They wait for confidence. But the truth is, no one walks your 8 feet in the dark except you. No one can see it exactly the way you see it. No one can define it exactly the way you must define it. And no one can walk it for you. Some people turn around before they reach the end. They go back to what is familiar, even if it's limiting. Familiar discomfort feels safer than unknown growth. But the ones who change their lives, the ones who become stronger, clearer, wiser, are the ones who keep moving forward even when the light is not yet visible. Because somewhere past those 8 feet is understanding. Somewhere past those 8 feet is growth. Somewhere past those 8 feet is a clearer version of yourself. Enlightenment is not a flash of light from the sky. It's what happens after you have walked through your 8 feet in the dark and realize the darkness did not stop you. Awareness is not comfort. Awareness is seeing clearly what you must change. So the real question is not whether darkness exists. The real question is this: do you know where your 8 feet in the dark begins? And maybe, even more important, what are you doing about your 8 feet in the dark? Because the distance is short, but the transformation on the other side can last a lifetime. Thank you for tuning in to the Magnificent Ones podcast. This episode was honest. This episode was for every performer out there that's been performing not just the job, but performing the character of the role they've been playing. May that stick with you. If this podcast challenged you, good. Clarity often does. The point here isn't consensus or reassurance. It's to leave you more precise than when you arrived. Keep what sharpens your thinking. Discard the rest. But don't confuse familiarity with truth. If this conversation mattered, follow the podcast and share it selectively with people who value depth and not noise. Until next time, stay disciplined with your thinking, selective with your attention, and honest about what you're really optimizing for.